Hi, PJ Scott here, your Navy Ways veteran, Vietnam era. Thank you for joining us on Veterans Forum magazine. Now, as most of my viewers know, I'm very active in American Legion, the Blinded Veterans Association, and Disabled American Veterans. And today I have a great guest who I kind of think is the daddy of all of us vision impaired, legally blind, and totally blind veterans, Walt Werkhoven, who is the VIST coordinator. That stands for Vision Impairment Service Team. Welcome, Walt, to Veterans Forum magazine.
Thank you, PJ. It's good to be here.
Now, what does your job, because you've had this job for quite some time, and I'm sure it's went through many evolutions, but basically give us in a nutshell, what does a VIST coordinator do?
I like to say that I'm a high-priced red tape cutter. Mm-hmm. I'm a blinded veteran's best friend because I work to help get through the whole morass of the system.
And I can vouch for that. He is excellent in that.
There's just a lot of things that have the high potential of going south. Mm-hmm. And so we try to help people to get through the system, to get them the services they need. And what does a VIST coordinator do is a great question. It's basically they start with case management. And I work with people, and I have worked with some of my veterans for 35 years. I've known them for a long time. As we say, we were both young then, mm-hmm. and we continue to work and we continue to work with them until they either pass away or I retire. Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting experience because you really get to know people, get to know their families, get to see them go through life. And
right.
We try to also, a major thing we do is to get them the appropriate services within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And the appropriate services can include such things as blind rehab skills training at a blind rehab center.
Right.
It can include a referral to our blind rehab outpatient specialist who comes to the home and trains people and evaluates people in their home environment. It can include, and a major emphasis that I've been working with in the past few years, getting people involved in primary care, getting them to come into the facility and get their health care done, because what we'd like to do is see every veteran, if possible, have a primary care provider that the old family doctor kind of thing that knows the veteran, knows their physical and psychological needs, and can then appropriately treat or send to specialty clinics as they need to.
So this is really kind of a holistic approach, and may I add that they also can provide you with some great magnification devices. I am not totally blind. I've had 20 lasers on my eyes, and I see like a periscope on a sub, and my vision actually fluctuates. The great thing about living in Western Washington is usually it's so cloudy, I don't need to use the cane. Double sunglasses, a hat, and I'm good to go. So yes, that's a vital for blinded vets. And these services are available to veterans who have visual difficulties, even though that vision loss had absolutely nothing to do with your service time. For me, it was service time. But there's many vets, all vets, regardless of if they're service-connected disabled, have a visual problem, you're going to be a big daddy for them. And let me tell you, when you can't drive and you can't read the small print, you need this man. You really do.
Well, I think it's important. You need to have a good discharge. Mm-hmm. A good discharge. And if you have that, then we can help you. Mm-hmm. And we can get you into the system. It's a 3-page form. Your DD-214, and if you have vision problems and have a statement from the doctor, that will help us, because if you are in fact legally blind or close to it, we probably can give you some enhanced eligibility that takes away the need to deal with the means test. Because the means test can be something that prevents people from getting service if they have an excessive estate.
Now, over the years, policies change, and you wanted to make a point to give us some exciting new information for vision impaired, blinded vets, and so forth. So tell us about that.
Sure. Well, if you want to have a number, it's Public Law 111-163. And with that, you can get, and $1, you can get a small cup of coffee at McDonald's. But what this came from was a Veterans Health Care Eligibility Reform Act. And on May 5 of 2010, the President signed this, which meant that catastrophically disabled veterans no longer need to pay for their health care, both inpatient and outpatient, and inpatient and outpatient medication. It's a really critical change. In the past, I'm going to tell you, in the last 15, 20 years, it's the biggest single thing that's affected me professionally, because it's allowed us to treat people without having to deal with the issue of income and without having to develop a service-connected claim for someone if their income was in excess of what was accepted in the means test. So it's been a huge boon. It's created quite a bit of paperwork, but we can do it. And this morning I did 2 of them, for example. So it's not terribly difficult, but it does require someone to do it. And that's part of what I do.
Yeah, that's a great benefit to the vets. So let me make sure this is clear. And of course, I'm service-connected disabled. This is for those that are service-connected or not?
Correct.
Or there's such a long time to establish service-connected disability. Believe me, I didn't get mine overnight, but that's too long a story to get into. And so they're not just left out there hanging in the wind.
What this means, PJ, is this. There are many men and women who fought for their country. They got out of the service. They developed a career. They developed savings. They did all of those things. And when they're age 80, they developed an age-related disease called macular degeneration. Because their savings was in excess of $80,000, we couldn't treat them, and it was awful. People that had fought for our country and had done so much, we lost the ability to help them. And so with this, we don't have to deal with the issue of income. All we have to do is deal with the issue of a good discharge and the disability. And it's really, really wondererful, because you really can help people, you really can make a difference in their lives. And a lot of our diseases, you mentioned service-connected versus non-service-connected. Probably the majority of people that we see have macular disease, and macular disease is an age-related disease.
Right.
And you know, many of our people are well up in years.
Right.
And they've not used the VA until they're, say, 80, 85 years old.
Right, right. And this bill, again, repeat the number for people again.
111-163.
And that refers to catastrophic, which is not necessarily blindness.
Correct.
Let's make that really clear.
Blindness is one of them.
Sure.
Paralysis is another one.
Right.
And there are other things that can be cumulatively used to develop this. It takes a lot more effort. For me, the only one that I use is the blindness, and they have to have a certain diagnostic code, and in the 369 series, to be specific. And if they got that, then we can help them, and we will help them.
Okay, now there is a VIST coordinator at every Veterans Hospital, correct?
That is correct. Not all of them are full-time, but we have full-time in this region, in Boise, Spokane, Walla Walla, Tacoma, Seattle, in Portland, and those are all full-time VIST coordinators.
Right.
And we have part-times in Roseburg and White City, in I know you reach into California, we have many full-time coordinators down in there
Right.
too. So we have I think about 170 VIST coordinators in the country, of which well over 100 are full-time.
Now remember, VIST is Vision Impairment Service Team Coordinator. Now, this is going to be seen all over the Northwest and California on TV, but this is also going to end up being on YouTube with the capacity of millions of people. A vet has a catastrophic injury, or maybe a son or a daughter has a World War I or Korean War vet. Who exactly do they ask for when they pick up the phone and call their nearest VA hospital? Who do they need to connect with?
If they don't have anybody they could think of, I would call social work service at the local VA hospital and say, I want to talk to the person who works with the blind. And then they could assist, should be able to assist, and get you to the help you need. If people called me, I would be very happy to help them, and I would put together a service there. The Blinded Veterans Association, whom you belong to,
Yes.
that's an organization that deeply cares about blinded veterans, and they will, in fact, help line up someone to assist this person wherever they happen to live in this continental 48.
Now, is there some kind of web page or something they could go to for that?
For the BVA
Yeah.
or for the VA?
Well, to get this information about how to hook up themselves or their dad or their uncle or whoever to get this information.
Well, Blinded Veterans Association has a well-documented web page. I'm sure that if you go into Google and look up Department of Veterans Affairs blind, you will get more information than you'll ever be able to use. But basically, you want to look for the specialist who knows blinded veterans in each facility, and that happens. Every facility has someone. Some people are more experienced than others.
Right. Well, folks, check this out, because this can save you enormous money. And I know when you don't have cash coming in, oh, that can affect your psychology just horrifically when you don't know where your next dollar is coming from. So if you are catastrophically injured, know someone that is, please do the research and get the information. Tremendous help to your vet. Walt, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much, and God bless you for helping so many blinded veterans in the Western Washington area. This is PJ Scott. Hang on. With me now, I'm delighted to have another Navy Ways veteran, Patricia Armstrong, went in the Navy just prior to I. Now, we didn't run into each other, but I feel like we're kind of Navy Wave sisters here.
Yeah.
Now, tell us, when did you decide to go into the military?
Well, I graduated in 1971, and my parents were the type of parents that you had to get a job right away and pay rent.
Oh,
and
okay.
I had 3 years of training in computers, and at that time you're talking about big mainframes. I mean, they take up a whole room.
I was shocked. You got computers in high school?
Yes.
Whoa.
But it was
Okay.
a technical school.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so, anyways, I couldn't get a job after graduating because they wanted people with experience.
That's an old story, and I think even men join the military because of lack of experience.
Right, right. So, I enlisted in August 5th, but before I had to wait a little bit because my father wasn't too
Thrilled.
eager
Right.
to sign the papers for me because I was 17 years old, and then I turned 18, but I think you had to be 21 at the time. So,
I think you're right, because my parents had to sign for me.
right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I asked my mom what was the reason, why wouldn't he sign? And she says that it's the typical father protection umbrella. And with me moving away from home, he couldn't do that any longer.
So there was a
So-
little worry on his part.
Yeah.
Had he been in the military himself?
No, my father at 5 years old had one of his arms cut off by a trolley car.
Oh my God.
So he escaped the military.
Yeah. Well, as well, that's a bona fide reason for
Yeah.
not going.
Yeah.
And so when you got to boot camp, what did you think?
It was pretty typical. I came from a pretty strict family and very much disciplined. I really enjoyed it. The only part I didn't like so much was the swimming, because I didn't know how to swim. So before I went in, I learned how to float on my back, so to speak, and do the backstroke, enough to get me through the training.
You know, I have to tell you, those 10 weeks at Bainbridge, Maryland were
That's
the
right.
roughest 10 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
Until I got matured and got other life experiences.
Well, there were a few good things about that place.
Right.
Because there were men there, or guys there.
Oh, well, we called them trees. They were
Trees,
yes,
that's right.
That's right. And you better not be staring down the trees too much or you're in trouble.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'd forgotten that. And also, when we went to
Chow
the
Hall?
Chow Hall, it was a rule that we were not allowed to skylark.
Right.
So,
You just would go down the hall or down the line with your tray, constantly looking at the
Right.
food and just pointing, and some hairy arm would come over and us off.
Yes.
I was so terrified
Yes.
of getting in trouble.
yes, we weren't allowed to look at the guys.
Yes. Yeah.
But
And then
we would
did-
sneak a peek sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, occasionally you do, yes. But I was so tall, I'd stick out. I mean, people would see me, I was 5'10" and a half. So,
Yeah.
anyway. So, did you get any kind of schooling after you got out of boot camp?
Schooling, yes. I went to personnel A school in
Good.
San Diego. But halfway through the personnel school, they saw in my records that I had background from my technical school, 3 years of training in computers. So they requested that I be on this modified task analysis team. And what they were trying to do was get the data findings for a new training curricula for 8 new ratings.
Oh, okay, that sounds interesting.
But the interesting part, this leads back to my training in technical school, was at that time you didn't have a laptop or
No.
a little computer or a desktop or anything.
Right. They were huge.
They were huge mainframes, and it started with a key punch. You would have this card about this size, and you would type the information on the card. Then you would take the cards over to another machine, which was a sorter, then there was a collator and a printer. And each one of those pieces of equipment, you had a board, and you had to actually, with little wires, connect the columns together of what you wanted to read out of the cards, the key punch cards. So there was a lot that went on to do that.
I would imagine so. It's not nearly as easy as it is today. I remember the first time I saw something like that, I thought, oh, wow, the movies weren't far wrong. I
That's
just
right.
thought it was science fiction to me at the time.
Exactly.
Right. Now, were you at a Waves barrack? Did you become friends with other Waves? Or were you able to get BOQ and comrades and get off base pretty quickly?
Oh, no. You mean when I was in A school?
Well, when you settled down into your routine job once you got out of A school?
I did. When I went to San Diego, I stayed in the Waves barracks for a short time, and then I got an apartment.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I reported in May of '72 to North Island. So you were just across the water in San Diego?
Just for a year, because in 1972, because of this project I was on, they asked me, did I want to be a personnelman or did I want to be a DP, which was data processing at the time.
And this is a picture you have here about that, isn't that about?
Yes.
And what is the article basically about?
That was just showing me and another co-worker working on the big mainframes for the modified task analysis team.
Right, right. So was this a Navy newspaper?
Yes.
Oh,
It was the
okay.
base paper.
Oh, okay,
Called The
good.
Hoist.
Good. And this here is, your parents must have been real proud of that. Training completed.
Right, on the back of it, it says compliments of Congressman Joe gaiters or gatos.
Oh, okay. Well, gee, I didn't get one of those. So that was pretty nice of your congressman to do that.
That was nice.
Yeah, that is.
And I was also, when we graduated from boot camp, I was the regimental commander.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. And
no, I wasn't that, but the tall girls had to be in front, and I was always terrified if I screwed up my marching, my company commander would be all over me.
Yeah, well, I was in the front of everybody.
Yes,
and
you were.
Being the kind of person I am, that was not an easy task.
Now, how did you get selected for that? Very responsible and all that?
I suppose so, and then I think our commander of our group would made some recommendations, but we did have to go to a board and be reviewed by several women and ask a lot of questions.
Well, I didn't get that. So listen, did you use your GI Bill once you got out of the Navy?
Probably a couple months ago. I'm so ashamed about that, but I did learn a lot of things when I was in the Navy. I was able to build my career on it. They provided me that, besides the GI Bill. And in that career, I learned a lot of things: my leadership skills, organization, discipline, loyalty.
Yes.
And I also went straight into civil service and retired in 2006. So it was all about pride in serving my country at the time, plus traveling. So
Patricia,
it was a lot of fun.
We've run out of time, but I am so glad you were able to stop by and tell us a little bit about your military time. Thank you for serving our country.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks.
This is PJ. Hang on. With me now is Tami Reuter, who is an employee of the Washington Department of Veterans Homes, which we refer to in this neck of the woods as Retzel. But this veterans home isn't any different than any veteran home where this is being aired, be it Alaska, Oregon, Idaho, California, and I hope to get in Montana shortly. So this is pertinent information, Tami, for whatever veterans home on the surface of the United States of America. Now tell us, Tami, what is your title and briefly what your job description is?
I'm the recreation manager and volunteer coordinator for the veterans homes. So I work with the community in providing activities for our veterans and soliciting and giving orientations for volunteers and helping them to be successful volunteers and have the opportunity to outreach and connect with our veterans who, you know, at one time were forgotten, but thank you to shows like this in our community, you know, people are remembering our veterans, and I help them stay alive in their hearts in action each day.
Right. So if a person, because I want you to consider volunteering at the veterans home nearest to you, wherever it may be, how would they discover that information, Tami?
Well, there's a couple things, because we really want to start and make sure people know how to find your veterans home anywhere in the United States. And so if you look on the internet for the National, I have to look at my notes, I'm sorry.
Sure.
National Association of State Veterans Homes. It is an organization that lists all of the state veterans home, and you just go click on your state and it lists contact information for any veterans home in any state.
Right. And the volunteers also help with their recreation side. I know the post that I belonged to at one time when we had an auxiliary, unfortunately the auxiliary folded, they participated in a bingo activity once a week.
And we do, any group can assist by volunteering, and it really works we want to make the volunteer experience meaningful for the group or individual. So when you call your volunteer coordinator, we want to know, what do you want to do? What is your interest? What is your passion? I mean, after knowing you, PJ, your passion is talking to veterans and making sure people know about veterans. So of course I'm going to say, well, you need to come and lead a discussion group for our veterans, because that's just from knowing you. Now, sometimes we have chief selection committees through the Navy. We are a Navy neighborhood. And so they have to do a community service event. Well, okay, they're young, healthy sailors.
Robust.
I make them do all the heavy lifting and
Right,
get out and do
right.
groundskeeping and things
Right.
that really help us
Right,
and
right.
make the environment better for our veterans.
Right.
But it really is connecting with an individual.
Right.
Or
you-
the organization.
And let's make a point. You do not have to commit to coming in 3 hours each week.
No,
I mean, if
no.
you want to do that, that's wonderful. But if you can only find time once a month, every little bit helps. Our veterans need your help more than ever now because we just don't have the money to
Right.
purchase things or purchase someone to do
Right.
busy work like we used to do. And I shouldn't say busy work, it's important work.
It
but-
is important.
Right.
Well, and one thing you may not know this, but some people are afraid of old people. They're afraid of our veterans at the Veterans Home. I still have volunteer work that you could do and become accustomed, become familiar with our
Right,
veterans.
right.
I have one lady who's been volunteering once a month for the past 3 years, and she just comes in and scans medical coupons for us
Oh, okay.
because it's a labor-intensive job. It
Right.
takes 8 hours, but she is serving our veterans
Right.
in a way. There's no glory, there's no fanfare,
Behind
but
the scenes.
it's comfortable for her.
Right,
And
yeah.
please know that your service to our veterans through volunteering, it's all good.
Yeah, well, I'm sure pretty much all veterans home, regardless of what state you're in, is all pretty very similar.
Some of the things that if you're becoming a volunteer for the Veterans Home, or any Veterans Home, what you might expect is just like schools in our communities, our veterans are considered a vulnerable population.
Right.
So don't be surprised, you're probably going to need to fill out a criminal background check
Right.
because as the volunteer coordinator, it's my responsibility to keep our veterans safe
Of
at
course.
the Veterans Home.
Of course.
You'll probably do some type of an orientation, fill out some paperwork, and then we'll get you started.
Okay, well, as we close, if there's one important thing you want to leave the audience with.
You know, the one important thing is please check and your veterans homes in your areas. I know we've been talking about volunteers, but for people who may want to move into the veterans home, we now in almost all of the veterans homes throughout the nation do short-term rehabilitative stay. And so we're experts at making veterans better. We want to help you get better and go back home too. But do call me at the veterans home anytime, and I'll be happy to help you find your volunteer opportunity wherever it is, anywhere.
Okay, and as we leave, that national web page they should check out because I'm seeing in like 22 different stations. Can you repeat that again,
Sure,
please?
it's the National Association of State Veterans Homes, www.nasvh.org.
Okay, folks, you heard it from the experts. Don't give it lip service. Help a vet. If you're a veteran, I want to say God bless you for serving. If you're taking care of a disabled vet, a double blessing for you, my friend. This is PJ with Tami Reuter. Thank you for joining us.